breaking news today. Man with weapon detained near Brett Kavanaugh's home. A California man carrying at least one weapon near Brett M. Kavanaugh's Maryland home has been taken into custody by police after telling officers he wanted to kill the Supreme Court justice, according to people familiar with the investigation. The man, described as being in his mid-20s, was found to be carrying at least one weapon and burglary tools. These people said, speaking on the condition of anonymity to discuss an ongoing investigation. Police were apparently notified that this person might pose a threat to the justice, but it was not immediately clear who provided the initial tip. The man apparently did not make it into Kavanaugh's property in Montgomery County, Maryland, but was stopped on a nearby street. Thank God. This is truly the result of the left being primed by leftist and Democratic politicians. I don't believe that you can be held responsible for, ginning people up if you're not actually saying, somebody's going to get you. It's really difficult. But listen to this quote from Chuck Schumer. Do you have it, Stu? This is when they were talking. This is before the decision that was leaked, but he's talking about, the court decisions that are coming, including Roe versus Wade.
Yeah, he says, I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions. That's unbelievable.
Okay. I mean, that is truly unbelievable. These guys do not have protection. They have had since the leak, thank God. Josh Hammer is joining us now. He is the opinion editor of Newsweek and the host of the Josh Hammer Show with Newsweek. I was just on it, I think, last week or the week before. He's really wicked smart. I think one of the real intellectual leaders of the conservative movement and a good friend. Welcome, Josh. How are you?
Glenn, you're way too kind as always, but great to join you again.
So, Josh, you're watching this. I've never seen anything like this. Apparently, it happened Tuesday night, as it's being reported. No, one report said it was Tuesday, and this one says 11:50 a.m. today. Are the justices safe?
First of all, it's tragic that we have to even ask that question. I mean, this is not a question that in a healthy republic, with a healthy rule of law, with a healthy law enforcement apparatus, where there is respect for institutions, where there is no sense of this kind of two-tiered system of justice between the deplorables and everyone else, where in a healthy, functioning democracy, are the justices safe is just simply not a question that ought to be asked. So the very fact that we're opening a conversation with that question, I think, is telling in and of itself. But the tragic and short answer, Glenn, I think, is no. And the answer right now, I think, it is a directly foreseeable consequence, unfortunately, of just the culture of anarchy, of lawlessness, of disrespect for institutions, of widespread iconoclasm that the Democratic Party and their leftist minions have fomented. They have directly fomented this culture. I mean, think back to the George Floyd riots in the summer of 2020. Kamala Harris there in Kenosha, Wisconsin, with bail funds for people who were rioting in the streets.
Right.
This is their thing. But even in San Francisco, obviously, with the Chesa Boudin news, lawlessness and anarchy is being rejected. The problem, obviously, is that it apparently has not trickled up to the Biden administration yet, because there is a direct statute on the books, 18 U.S. Code 1507, that prohibits the protesting outside the justices' homes. And, Attorney General Merrick Garland had some mealy-mouthed memo where he said, this is not appropriate. But, he hasn't brought a single case. He could do that.
Right.
He should.
And yet tomorrow we're going to see the January 6th show trial, first show trial that I know of in my lifetime here from America. We know about them in Russia and other places like that. Yesterday, terrorists firebombed a pro-life center in Buffalo. This is the second time that there has been a firebombing by the Revenge or Jane's Revenge, and they are calling for a nationwide 8 p.m. Riot on the day that the Supreme Court releases their decision. And yet, yesterday, the Homeland Security came out, and they didn't really point out the anarchists. They didn't point out the left. Again, they said there is some on both sides of the issue. Well, I'd like to see that.
Look, I mean, and here's the thing, okay? I mean, you and I both revere the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution obviously does provide you with a constitutional right to peaceably voice your opinions in the street, on a sidewalk, and so forth. What it does not allow you to do is to issue threats or to act violently or to try to tear down institutions of government and therefore violate the most sacrosanct rudimentary principles in the rule of law. I think another takeaway, though, that I have from this, and I think back to the leak that just happened a little over a month ago now in early May when Politico released it, because we've really been in uncharted waters since then, right? This has just simply never happened in modern Supreme Court history. And the very fact that this opinion was leaked in the first place, I think, is the biggest assault on the court's institutional legitimacy over the past half century, full century. I mean, go back as far as you want, honestly. And the fact that we have not discovered the identity of the leaker is crazy. But I think back to the very night that was released, it was a Monday in early May. I was at the time watching very carefully. I was trying to see if any leading Democrats, MSNBC, left-wing cable news talking head type figures, whether they would condemn the leak. To this day, I haven't seen a single one. A single one.
No, they praised the leaker.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they are praising the leaker. So they have directly abetted this culture. They really have. And at this point, they are playing with fire. And every day that the Dobbs opinion is not released, I think, only exacerbates the threat to the justice's personal safety.
So do you think, I mean, the thing to do, because they've got a couple of really controversial things coming, and they're supposed to be ready in the next 3 weeks. Usually they leave the most controversial for the last so they can just get on a plane and get out of town. But that's not going to help anybody. Why would they hold these things? Just release them.
So generally speaking, that is what they do. You're right about that. They typically do hold the highest profile opinions for the last week of the term. And that's not a legal thing. That's not like U.S. code. They're not legally bound to do that. It's just kind of the customs that they to do that. They kind of, but in this particular case, because again, we are in uncharted waters here, a leak of this nature just simply has not happened, period, full stop. I and many others said that if you care about the justices' personal safety, and by the way, not just the justices, but also the law clerks. I mean, I hate to make it personal, but I have a number of friends who are at the court this term. I mean, probably at least 5, 6, 7, so I consider personal friends who are clerking this term. I am worried about their personal safety, too. I mean, there are people have tried to dox the identity of the clerks who are clerking for the conservative Supreme Court justice. I saw some horrible Instagram post that basically said, here are their names, go find them. I mean, it's just awful, awful stuff.
Jeez.
And I think every day that they don't go about releasing the Dobbs opinion, or at a bare minimum, Glenn, what I said, that at least privately, I don't know if I said this publicly, what they should have done is the very next day, or at least that week, they could have issued a one-line sentence that said, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit is hereby overturned and Roe versus Wade is reversed. Opinions to follow. That is what they could have done.
Correct.
But they chose not to. And at this point, they're really, really playing with fire. And I just hope after today's horrible incident with Justice Kavanaugh that the Chief Justice realizes that the moment is now to release this opinion. It is now.
So two things as we talked to Josh Hammer from Newsweek, and I hate to say he's from Newsweek because he's one of us, but the two questions that I have for you are this. I talked to Mike Lee, and he said he thought that as soon as this court was finished this year, that we would know the name of the leaker. And he said, I hope at worst, or at best, I guess, that they would be, their law license would be taken away. They would never be able to practice again any kind of law anywhere in America. I would hope that would happen. I hope more than that would happen. But he said they were waiting on that until they got all these. He thought it would come out the last day. So that, coupled with, he also said he felt they knew pretty close, if not right on, who that person was. Do you agree with that or not?
So first of all, Mike Lee, I respect so immensely. Actually, my first year of law school summer, I actually was a law clerk on the Senate Judiciary Committee staff. So I go pretty far back with Senator Lee, and his opinion on these matters is always so valuable here. I want to agree with him. What he is saying should happen. That is exactly what should happen. The leaker should be disbarred, should be formally shunned. Unfortunately, I fear something somewhat approximating the precise opposite of that will happen. If my intuitions on this are correct, and it is a liberal clerk, someone from Justice Sotomayor's chambers in particular, but perhaps Justice Kagan's or Justice Breyer's chambers, what I predict will happen is that the identity will be exposed. It's crazy it has not happened already. I mean, there's literally 37 law clerks here on 12 from the liberal chamber, so it's not a particularly big sample size. But the identity probably will be exposed, assuming that the marshal of the Supreme Court, a woman named Gail Curley, is even remotely competent at her job. But what I predict will happen after that is that the leaker will effectively try to forfeit, will forfeit some law firm career, perhaps, but then we'll get like a very rich kind of speaking MSNBC talking head gig. And frankly, it would not surprise me if a top 10 to top 20 law school actually hired her as a professor for reproductive rights studies or some fabricated, concocted constitutional field like that. So I want to agree with Senator Lee, but I do fear something closely approximating the opposite might transpire.
No. Yeah, my gut tells me the same thing. Last thing, God forbid somebody kills one of these justices and kills a conservative. That means Biden gets to pick the next justice, which would change the balance of the court and would absolutely set the country on fire. On fire. What do we do to make sure that these guys are safe? And I say that about both sides. I don't want either side to experience violence or threats. What do we do?
So one thing that's been pointed out here, I could be wrong. I don't think any of the 9 justices actually live in the District of Columbia. It's possible, actually. I shouldn't say that. It's possible, like Sotomayor or Kagan. I guess I'm not positive. But the vast majority of them live in Maryland or Virginia, where it's worth pointing out, despite those being in recent years light blue states, both of those states currently have Republican governors. It's Glenn Youngkin in Virginia. It's Larry Hogan in Maryland. So in a situation like this, if the federal government is just completely dropping the ball, if they are just not going to prosecute under the statute that I mentioned earlier, if they are not going to send out whatever kind of DOJ, kind of FBI mercenaries that they would need to send out to protect the justice, then the onus can and should fall on Governor Hogan and Governor Youngkin to do what has to be done at kind of a state National Guard level or something like that, right? It's unfortunate, but it's hardly the first time that governors have had to kind of step up when the federal government fails. I think about kind of immigration on the southern border, of course, right? Whether it's Texas, Arizona, any of these border states. Whenever the federal government fails to do its job, it is incumbent upon the states to do that job for them. If I go all the way back to the 2012 U.S. Supreme Court case, Arizona versus United States, this is kind of the whole point of Justice Scalia's remarkable dissent in that case, actually. He basically said that at the time, what Arizona was doing with respect to illegal immigration was its constitutional prerogative and indeed its duty, because when the federal government fails to do its job, in that case to secure the border, the states must and can step up. So I think something similar could and should happen with respect to Maryland and Virginia if the federal government fails here.